It's the 6th or 18th of October 2021. Now, obviously, that means that we're in October, and historically, October is Domestic Abuse Awareness Month. Now, in my time as a personal trainer and a junior doctor and a medical student, I've seen a lot of domestic abuse. Hazard a guess saying I've seen most types of domestic abuse, and I've seen victims of each type. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you all that you need to know about this, and I'm going to really open up your eyes. So make sure you subscribe and like my videos, because I'm going to really open your eyes. Domestic violence is the most commonly documented issue when it comes to domestic abuse, but it's only a part of it. And when you watch these videos, I'm going to detail what it's all about. But today I'm just going to list the kind of domestic abuse that there is. Okay, just a list of them, and then in later videos I'm going to expand on that. Okay, the first one is what I call online. Now, online is where one partner spreads malicious stuff about the other online, or sometimes and there's some overlap with sexual abuse in that sometimes they share intimate photographs of the other party without their consent. And it's called something sometimes called revenge porn, but it does happen. And yes, as someone who's I have actually worked in security in some adult clubs, and I have seen some people attempt to spread such malicious stuff online. And being a work on security, I've put a stop to it. That's quite rare. The most blatant I saw was once when a young girl who's very dear to me, I found her brother had videoed her in the shower, and basically he was selling copies of that video to his friends at school. Needless to say, I did something about it. I actually um, took his camera down to the police station, and the police managed to find out who had shared it to and basically put an end to it. That's the one example. Next one is physical, and that's by far the most well documented and the most famous, and most people can deal with that. Okay, they see a lot of it. It's on never a week goes by without some kind of coverage on the mainstream media. So I'm not going to talk about that too much at the moment. Next one is emotional abuse. Now, emotional abuse is when basically got one partner who's somewhat toxic, and there are several characteristics about a toxic partner, and I'm going to read through a list. Nothing you do is good enough for this person. They don't take seconds to criticize even at the drop of a hat. Okay, they constantly dig up the past. They have an attitude of I'm right, you're wrong. They love making you feel guilty or ashamed. They're critically controlling, or very controlling, and they don't care how you feel. Um, they thrive on making you feel torn. They will violate your boundaries and never accept the word no. They like to see you suffer and don't care about your feelings. They always make it things about them, and in many cases, they don't realize that they're doing it. It does actually happen. Now, alongside emotional abuse are what I call some horrible things. First of all, capability. They may not think you're capable of doing anything, even tying your own shoelaces. Very often, they care more about other people's families than they do their own. When I was a medical student, a research-based medical student, I surveyed a load of Indian students, and Indian and Pakistani students, and I asked them, among those responded, how many of you feel that your parents care more about other people's families than do their own? And every single person of Asian background said yes, they do. What does that tell you? Very often they're cheapskates. They'll do things on the cheap, and as we all know, if you pay cheap, you pay twice, and sometimes it has devastating effects. They're very, very good at comparing you with other people. Well, why can't you be more like such a person? They're always saying this person's better than you at this sort of thing, and it can be quite devastating. In terms of coordination, they always seem to be late or very, very disorganized, and guess what? They put the blame on you. Then there's a conflict. I'm right, you're wrong, my way or no way. Then there's credibility. So if you say 2 and 2 is 4 and the third party says 2 and 2 is 99, the abuser will always think that the person who says 2 and 2 is 99 is correct. And there's the issue of capability. They don't think that, say culpability. If anything goes wrong, they assume that you are the one to be blamed. On top of that, there's neglect. So basically, the person doesn't neglects their responsibilities. And then there's sexual. Sometimes the abuser gets the victim to do things that he or she may not want to do. And I've seen some horrible cases of this, which I'll talk about in a later video, depending if Facebook or YouTube allow it. Then there's unfaithfulness. Okay, the one partner cheats on the other. In some case of unfaithfulness, sometimes the cheater will say that I've been driven to it by a toxic partner, and that does happen. There's unfair divorce. In some religions, basically, if a man wants to divorce a woman, all he has to do is say, I divorce you 3 times, and he gets a religious divorce. Then there's what I call DFT. Now, if you're a business owner, this is very, very important. DFT, whether you're in network marketing, a terrestrial business, or any form of business, this is something you really need to be aware of. DFT is what I call domestic financial terrorism, and I will do a separate video about this. Domestic financial terrorism basically is where the abuser says to the victim, go on, leave me, but how will you pay the bills? And the victim has no choice and is powerless to do anything about it and has to go back to the abuser. I've seen many cases of this. Now, there's sometimes what you call forced arranged marriage. Now, the thing is, let's clarify one thing. Forced marriage and arranged marriage are one and the same thing. There is no difference. They are forced. Anyone who tells you that arranged marriages are, there's no pressure, there is lots of pressure. It's big business. So don't let anyone make you believe anything otherwise. Sometimes it gets you to marry someone who's a relative. Sometimes gets you to marry someone who is of a wide age group. The worst case I know of is a 6-year-old girl who is very dear to me. Who, well, the father wanted her to be married to someone who is 55 years old. That's a 49-year age gap, and that I think is absolutely terrible. There's one type of domestic abuse which I think is very rare. I've only ever seen one case of it, and that's forced fattening, where basically in this case, I have the client's written permission to tell you this, where the parents forced this young girl to eat lots and lots of fatty food to make her so unattractive, so no white man would find her attractive. By the time she came to see me, she was a diabetic. Luckily, she's no longer on medication. I got her in shape. But I'll talk to you more about that later. Then there's obviously female genital mutilation, which again I'll talk about in quite some length later on. That's where basically a young lady's genitals are mutilated, basically to make sure the husband has control over her. Then there's forced language. Now, anyone of an ethnic minority will know about this. Basically, your parents don't speak to you, or refuse to speak to you in English, and only want to speak to you in their native language, and it causes untold problems. Then there's forced religion. In some cases, the parents can force, or even the husband can force the wife or whatever to follow a certain religion. Or if they try and leave the religion, they're in trouble. Okay. Again, I'll talk to you about that in quite some detail. Forced career. In some cultures, particularly Asian cultures, they force their children into studying courses such as medicine, dentistry, law, and accountancy, or engineering against their own will. In some cases, I have seen 8 suicides because of this. I'm sure it's much more than that, but for some reason, that's not illegal in this country, despite campaigning on this. And again, I'll do a video on this later on. Forced clothing. Anyone of an ethnic minority background will know about this. Oh, your parents say, oh, you can't wear those clothes, you're going out somewhere, you are the son or daughter of an engineer or a doctor or a dentist, you can't be seen like this. Or in some cases, some religions, they make them wear full face coverings or whatever. Forced culinary practice. Many people of Indian or Pakistani background will tell you that their parents will force them to eat food of Indian or Pakistani background, and when it comes to going to school or things like that, they've never experienced Western food before. It can be quite devastating for them. Forced culture. This causes all sorts of issues, where basically the parents basically still live according to the culture from their home countries, and being torn between two cultures. If you think of all the things I've talked about, causes no end of distress. Um, then there's basically forced holidays, where basically parents of an immigrant background, when they go on holiday, they will only very commonly it's groomed them for arranged marriages. But again, it's a horrible thing to undergo, where all your friends go to Spain or Germany or uh, nice countries, and you're going to end up going to India or Pakistan. It's quite devastating. Forced schooling. Sometimes parents of immigrant backgrounds force their kids to go to schools they don't want to, or forced tutoring, basically to try and pump up their grades, to force them to study subjects they don't want to. I've known many students who are into arts and things such as that, and their parents forced them into sciences. And in one case, it caused a suicide. Forced sexuality. And there's one. What I say now, I have full written permission to mention this. I do know of one lady of Asian background, and she knew from the age of 13 that she was into girls, not into boys. And she secretly wrote in her diary that she dreamed of marrying a woman. And unfortunately, her parents saw that, and they actually forced her to marry a man who was 25 years older than her. And she kept it a secret for a very, very long time. Now, I do security in a gay bar, and I've got incredibly good gaydar. I can tell a woman who's a lesbian or bisexual a mile off. And unfortunately, this is the only case I know of where I didn't notice it. I did, but then when I found out, I thought I thought I should have done more. But so that does happen. Speaking of someone who does security in a swingers club, when we do what we call bi night, where basically men who are gay or bisexual, how many of these men are married men, but they've been forced. They're very, very miserable. The wife's just as miserable, and basically they come in for a little bit of time or action with what do you call it, someone of the same gender. It's very, very sad to see. I think it's really, really horrible that their families do this. There's what I call forced smoking, which is basically they don't force their kids to smoke, but what happens, a lot of these people who are smokers smoke among their kids. I actually have seen people smoke among babies, and what actually happens is the child starts to develop bronchitis or asthma or other such smoking related conditions through no fault of their own. It's just that the parents have been smoking around them, and basically they have passive smoking. Now the thing here is these children are at a much higher risk of smoking related diseases because of this reason. I think, and to my mind, it's a form of child abuse. And then lastly, forced social activities. This is very, very common, especially of those of you of Indian or Pakistani background. You could be having a normal Friday or Saturday, and suddenly, before you know it, your parents say, "Oh, we're going to such a person's house tonight." You may have had plans or whatever, but no, it goes out the window, and they're forcing you to go to groom you for arranged marriage or things such as this. It's horrible. So that's basically the list, the laydown of all the types of domestic violence, domestic abuse that there are. Now, it must not be forgotten that men can also be the victims of domestic abuse as well. Now, if you look below, you'll see a link to, if you have been affected by the issues here, uh, the government's helpline for this, and on top of that, there's a link to a fact sheet that I've written. This is the first of several fact sheets I've writing about this, and basically over the next few weeks I'll be doing a lot of videos about this. Hopefully you'll find this interesting, but keep liking and sharing, and in the next few weeks I'll be doing a lot. Next 2 weeks I'll be doing a lot more videos on this. Thank you very much for your time. Speak to you soon. Stay safe. Bye bye.